Dr. Stephen Chu, welcome back to Nobel Book Week Dialogue.
Thank you.
I think it is the third time you're here, isn't it?
It's the third time for Nobel Week, maybe 4 or 5 other times for mine and friends of mine.
Someone told me that is it your wife's birthday coming up here? And you have decided that this is a very good way of celebrating her birthday. Is that true?
She was born on December 10th, and in 1997 she said, so I said happy birthday, and she said, it's a nice birthday present, how can you top that?
I hope she's as happy as we are having you back from time to time. You have a very unique background, not only because you're, I guess, the unofficial record holder in number of Nobel Week Dialogue attendances, but you have a background both as, of course, a world-renowned scientist, being awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1997, but you also served as the United States Secretary of Energy between 2009 and 2013. Can I ask, in which of those 2 roles do you feel that you have contributed most to society, or to use the words of Alfred Nobel, conferred the greatest benefit to mankind?
You know, it really depends on the time of day. I think, you know, in public office, there are many things one can do. Many of the things are behind the radar screen. It's not, you don't see it in the press, but you see it in action, and that was very rewarding. On the other hand, you also see things that in science that one might have started a decade or 3 decades ago that have a life of their own and are growing. Just one bit of irony, I got my Nobel Prize for laser and cooling trapping of atoms. At the time I was doing the work, it wasn't clear what the applications were. It turns out one of the applications might be a satellite mission that can help monitor changes in water tables and in glaciers through satellite in the most sensitive way possible. During the time I was doing research, I had no idea that would be an application.
Right. Isabella Lövin, I know nothing about your wedding anniversaries, and I don't think you're a Nobel laureate yet, but you are, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden. You are the Minister of International Development Cooperation and Climate, and the spokesperson for the Green Party. But before you entered the political scene, you were a well-known journalist and a I guess, awarded author for the book The Silent Sea. Was awarded the Grand Prize of Journalism in 2007, I guess. Mm-hmm. In that book, you are, I guess it's fair to say, very critical towards politicians, and you're rather upset about them, and you think it's so easy to solve the problems. I even think that you say in the book that, hang on now, it's not even nuclear science. Now you are a very powerful politician, and you actually have maybe not a nuclear scientist, but at least an atom scientist sitting next to you. Mm-hmm. Have you changed your view of being a politician? Is it easier, harder than you thought?
Well, I think my observation in the book and doing the research on why we emptied our own seas on fish when we have scientists warning all the time and the facts were actually on the table. I think what I understood in the end was that what was lacking was not the facts or the science, but it was actually the political will to do something about it. And I think you need, of course, you need good science, you need good applications, but you also need the political side to actually listen to the scientists. I think climate change is one of the most obvious examples of that we've had the scientists warning about climate change for so long time, but it took us more than 25 years of climate negotiations before we had the climate agreement. So I think it's good that we have scientists and people also from the outside coming into politics, because we need also people on the inside to try to transform the knowledge into action, and that needs to be in legislation, it needs to be in practical agreements such as the Paris Agreement.
Can I ask, the whole theme for this dialogue is where science meets society. Do they?
I mean, in the best of worlds, it does. And I think that President Obama appointed you as the Minister of Energy is fantastic, a Nobel laureate. Unfortunately, we see now some other appointments from the Trump administration that is not really based on science when it comes to climate change. I'm being a bit diplomatic here.
You don't have to, please, go ahead. Be as bold as you like.
So that is also a way of actually, well, showing political leadership, that you take science, you take knowledge into your craftsmanship of doing legislation and doing what is needed. And with your application that you actually can monitor now glaciers, that is a beautiful story, because it really comes back to now we can actually see what's happening with climate change, and the glacier and the Arctic ice sheets are now at a historical low level, not only at its surface but also in its depth or its. So I guess that's one of your applications. That's fantastic.
One of your applications is used, and what is your take? I mean, you sort of symbolize this science meets society, I guess, in a better way than most.
Well, I think science, climate change, misuse of the ocean are two great examples where it can inform society what is happening, and more important, what are the potential risks, where the uncertainties may be large, but they're huge risks. What society does with this information is up to the political systems. You know,
do they do enough?
There could be a legitimate debate on what do you do about the risks of climate change. I don't think it's a legitimate debate to say whether it's happening or not, or the fact that humans play a major, if not the major role in it. And so it is a bit worrisome that climate change is being put in the same basket in the United States as another crackpot theory like evolution.
Right. Obviously. And what is the solution to that? Is it the scientists that need to be better in explaining, like Johan Rockström earlier, what is happening? This is the facts. Or is it politicians that need to really understand the scientists?
Well, actually, when I was a journalist and I was doing research on overfishing and the state of our oceans, I was very frustrated with the scientists, because I tried to interview people saying, well, what is the overall view? And all I could find were scientists were saying, well, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you something about acidification, I can tell you something about cod, I can tell you not about all the cod, but the cod in the Baltic Sea, or actually the cod in the eastern Baltic Sea. So, I mean, scientists are very, very niched, and they don't find, very many of them are not very comfortable with kind of making an overall assumption of something that also could be interpreted as political or an advice for politicians. So the ones that I find that I really admire are the ones that have the courage to also, I mean, and the passion to talk about their science in a wider way, and not being so scared of going out of the scientific role, because then you can actually really contribute to development, and a number of scientists are fantastic at doing that.
I think she might be talking about you, Stephen, but I'm not sure. The title of this session is "Where Will Our Food Come From in the Future?" which is sort of a very open and not very distinct question. If I were to ask you to give us a very precise and bold answer to that question, what would you say, Stephen?
Well, it's a macro and a micro question. As we heard before, we have the capacity to feed 12 billion. There's a distribution wealth problem. We have the capacity to increase that capacity. Hopefully the population of the world doesn't go over 10 billion, but there are many other things having to do.
And why do you say hopefully?
Well, I think when there's rising prosperity in the world, rising education, particularly among women, much less infant mortality, there's automatically birth control that kicks in. And I think you don't want to have a whole world view and a world economy based on a growing population. So more younger people take care of fewer older people. This is, in the United States, we call this a Ponzi scheme. And
in science, you said?
I think it's still called the same. There can be a world where you have rising economic prosperity, but with fewer people. But how you manage that, but going back to feeding the world, things like that, if you can feed the world, but if you have industrial farming, that there's good weather here but not good weather there, and you can ship things around the world at very low cost, this does something not so good to the local population. If you have a few bad years of the local population, agriculture collapses, their economy collapses, the whole social structure collapses. The industry can feed the world, so you have to pay attention to the micro part of this as well.
Where will the food come from that needs to be produced somehow? The sea that isn't silent anymore? Or?
I think you raised some very important points there. I think on gender equality, that will be really a crucial thing for the demographic development. But also on local production of food. And there I just want to say that also wars and conflicts are the major causes of food scarcity in the world and starvation. So I think we can manage, but we need to eat less meat. In the rich part of the world, I think in Africa it's 17 kilos per person and annum. In Sweden it's now 87. Wow. And I think in the US it's 125 kilos or something. And this is really not sustainable. We need to eat less meat and more
less, meaning 50% less, 90% less?
Look, in Sweden we ate around 60 kilos in 1990, and I didn't see anyone on starvation. So I mean, we could eat a lot less.
And is that the role of the politician to decide?
I think meat consumption has become a status symbol led by the United States, unfortunately. And so I think the United States should lead in educating its school children that this is not good for your health. It's not good for the planet. And so until the United States takes some leadership in that, it will remain a status symbol for developing countries.
Right. I think we had a question or actually a question from us answered by the audience. Maybe we should have a quick look at the result. What is the most important area for policymakers need to focus on? Food waste reduction. Good work, Tristan, earlier here, 45%. Do you agree? Is it food waste that is the most important area for policymakers?
I mean, we're producing around 25% for the waste bin, and that is really not sustainable. So I think there's a lot that can be done when it comes to efficiency, both in the food production, but also how we as consumers are acting at home, because a lot of waste is done at home. So we need a lot more information and education on that bit. But I liked very much the animal welfare answer there, because I think if we really care about our animals, then meat would not be as cheap as it is now.
Stephen, short answer?
Very quickly, I would say more on the nutritional side, that it's not just calories, because empty calories in developing countries lead to remarkable rates of obesity. I think it's the nutritious food and how you do this. And I was a little bit astounded to learn that apple that I used to think was good food was something else, because it had been on the shelf so long. But nutrition in food is a big deal, and it should be balanced in that, you're trying to raise healthy people. Bad nutrition early in childhood is really retards growth, intellectual growth, physical growth, everything, societal growth.
One final question. If you were to recommend us sitting here, one thing that we should think about to be able to sort of confer to the greatest benefit to mankind, what would you recommend us to do? And you're not allowed to say to become a Nobel laureate or become a top politician.
I think get engaged. I think this is really important at this time of age now, when so many of us feel that we can just show our engagement through internet or Facebook, and we like something, we dislike something else. But really the meeting between people and getting organized to really push for change, that is
Get engaged. Stephen too.
Well, I think we see these societal problems, and to me, you look at food and nutrition, land use, energy, water, and it all is really part and parcel one big problem. So how we go forward, science can inform politicians. Science can also develop new technologies to make better solutions much more competitive, so the older ways of doing business actually don't stack up. So there are many things where remain an optimist in what science can do.
Stephen too, Isabella Lövin, thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you back in many years.